Songs are prayers, mantras for becoming, anthemic heirlooms and portals to our deepest truth. Songs are my favorite way to connect with people and their stories. My name is Hope Littwin, and this is Three Songs Podcast, a place to excavate your story through the songs that raised you. EDI KWON graced my life this year when she started as a fellow through the Lewis Art Center at Princeton. Her course, The Ceremony Is You, which explored Korean shamanism and ceremonial performance practice, was phenomenal. Additionally, getting to know her these last few months has been one of the highlights of my year. EDI is a deeply caring, phenomenally gentle being who is full of love, creativity, and playful curiosity about the world and its humans. I hope you enjoy this episode of Three Songs with violinist, improviser, songwriter, shaman, and beautiful performance artist, EDI KWON.
I would love to start with a song if you have one in mind.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's going to be a totally grounding one.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So amazing.
Okay, that was it. That was
You are very full of surprises.
I hope so.
I feel like the longer I spend time with you, the more like it starts to open up, and then all these really surprise. I'm like, ooh, Eddie's so playful. Oh, Eddie's so kooky.
I can be a little kooky.
I love it.
The more you live, the more lives that you live.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of compound. And then every once in a while you get an opportunity to kind of like drill or like dig.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this is. So when I was thinking of like what kinds of songs that I wanted to bring, it's like such an expansive, infinite question.
Did it feel like, oh, what three selves are you bringing today? Is that what it felt?
Or like what are three songs that perfectly, paint a picture of who you are as an artist? But instead, the songs that came up are the songs that like had a really profound imprint on me when I was very young. So I thought that I would bring three songs from when I was a teenager that, even many, many decades later, they are still kind of nestled in my heart and they still reverberate and they help, they just help inform both my creative choices and my decisions and what I like and what I value, and also they kind of remind me of who I am and where I came from and what I loved when the stakes were like much lower. This first song is by the Blood Brothers.
What does that sound? Do you hear that?
Is that a ghost?
What's the thing you said that a ghost would respond to?
Oh.
So many. You said so many things that I wanted to dig into. Oh my gosh. The image I got when you're talking about lives being collected is I can't remember the name of the video game, but it's like you roll. You're just like a sticky ball.
Katamari?
Katamari.
Yeah. I think Katamari Damash. Katamari Damash.
Yeah. And I think about, when you pick, that's such an interesting concept of like picking up lives. And I think, especially as like a freelance musician, you end up doing that. I feel like musicians are some of the most beautiful people I know, and I think part of it has to do with that aspect of just how you live your life is like picking up other people's experiences. Like that's part of your, and it is like the storyteller thing. You're traveling all over the world. That I think this is one of the things I actually really like that I've discovered in this podcast that I didn't think I was going to discover is just how much juice there is to like a lot of musicians I have on here have incredible concepts about life because of how much they've had to travel and how many people they've met and how many people they've engaged with in a way that is not surface, that is like like you come to town, you share like a very deep experience pretty quickly, and then that's kind of the I don't know if this is too soon to ask, but I'm very curious about like the shaman musician crossover and anything you want to say about that, because I feel like it kind of relates to what you were just like, the idea of many lives coming together, or like kind of alchemical work, or anything you want to say about that.
Sure. Well, that's a very deep question. You know, I think you're right in that musicians, when they enter and they create a space for inviting questions and inviting a sort of generosity of spirit, like reciprocity. So I think when it works, you know, as musicians and artists, we share something so true, deeply true to ourselves. And I think if we're doing that in an authentic way, many people, whether or not they share the same lived experience or identity or background or whatever, I really think that if you kind of dig deep enough, you get to something, or you get to things that are more and more universal. And so if you share that generously, I think people can see themselves in it, or it provokes questions that are kind of too sticky to ignore. And oftentimes, after a performance, that's kind of like, you know, it's a continuation of the connection and the relationship. And so the conversations that are had, the sharing of like personal truths and personal stories, sharing of cultural background, those are the moments that feel so rich. And so I think music and this kind of energetic space creation is kind of like a gift of a door, or like a portal, or like a window. And I think there's a lot of, or there can be overlap to shamanic practice as well. You know, of course, shamans have existed across many different cultures for many hundreds and thousands of years, and they've had different roles and functions within those communities. You know, some through lines are like cleansing of spaces, or sort of facilitation of spirits and souls from one realm to another. It's to celebrate births, celebrate deaths, both like literal and metaphorical and metaphysical. It's to mark important moments in time and season. It's to kind of affirm and deepen bonds with one another and within communities. It's to mourn, it's to grieve, it's to hold space and to create a container for these kind of unnameable feelings. So I think as artists, when it worked, at least from my perspective and my experience, when it's really worked, those qualities of exchange emerge, and that's kind of the signal for me. When I feel those qualities emerge, it's kind of how I know that I'm doing my job in the best way that I can.
What does it mean to you to be a timekeeper?
A timekeeper? Wow, time is...
I guess I asked because when I was listening to what you were saying about some of the purposes of, or like some of the roles that shamans can have, I kind of noticed like, oh, there's like an aspect of timekeeper. So it's like historical, generational timekeeper, but also timekeeper of like born into this life and die. So like enter and leave, that's a certain amount of timekeeping. And then I wonder if space is a certain amount of timekeeping too. Like if you're holding a space, you're holding a moment. So there's an interesting like, I've had a few people on here say, without having talked to each other, like that their definition of music is sharing space. And I was like, that's kind of, there's like a timekeeper role to that. There is, and we all know how much energy and time it takes to like create a space that people can enter and leave. That's so much energy. So
yeah, that's a beautiful question.
And however you want to answer it too. Just wondering if that term rings any.
Yeah, maybe like something that's coming to mind is like a time caretaker.
Ooh, yeah.
And because you're right, I think the ability to take care of time when you're gathering or when you're with people is such a beautiful quality to develop, or skill to develop. And that's something that I feel like is one of my life devotions, is to tune into that skill more and more and more. I think there's a way to kind of change the substance of time within a moment. And I think that's largely through listening. It's like through listening and through the presence that you can cultivate in that moment and offer to other people. A lot of times when I think about listening, I remember the friends and the teachers and mentors in my life and loved ones who had a quality of listening that made me feel like whatever was happening in that moment was the most important thing that could be happening in the entire universe. And that quality of listening, it changes you, when you feel that, when you feel someone listening to you so deeply, not from like a critical way, not in a way that you're kind of, thinking of what to say next, or you're trying to see if they're cool or smart or hot or whatever, but you're listening to just witness, And I think when I've experienced that from other people, that has changed, like those moments changed me forever. And it both kind of like raises the stakes of that moment, because it's like, oh, okay, they're really listening. Like, okay, if they're really listening, what do I really need to say? But then also, it kind of lowers the stakes in like an existential way, because I think within that deep listening there's a sense of safety and care, and assurance. So I think it lowers the stakes in that there can emerge this like sense of peace, or knowing that, all right, whatever I say, it's gonna be okay. Like this person is listening not to do something with what I say, but to just hold it. And so I think both as an artist and as a teacher and as someone who's trying to be a better and better friend, I'm trying to cultivate that quality of listening when I'm with people, and to bring that just back to time. I think it has such a powerful impact on our sense of time. I think that quality of listening can make the time that's shared between people like feel like full or suspended or heightened or even more urgent. And I feel like it's a very subtle but like extremely potent tool.
It's so interesting. Like, there's a lot that you just said. I think something that I'm noticing right now, and part of it has to do with just the economics of why be a musician. It's so much money to go to school. It's so much money to have instruments. It's so much money to put on concerts that don't make any money. It's basically like economically you're doing it to lose money most of the time. Most people most of the time. So it can't be about that. But that's how we those are our tools for measurement of like, did it work? Did a lot of people buy tickets? Did a lot of streams happen or whatever, And so I think this moment is very cool because we're building new tools of measurement in this moment, or maybe returning to older tools of measurement, or like recovering older tools of measurement of how do we know we did a good job? What does that mean to us to do a good job? And coming out of some of maybe the more traditional religious versions of that, you know, I feel like the arts just have like shape shifted through all of these ways. Like a lot of the older musicians I love were court composers in the Habsburg Empire or something, you know, so it's like they had to write operas that like the king felt seen in, that they were like, okay, I feel like you think I'm a good guy, that makes me feel good, I'll like give you more money to make your next opera. Or they were church musicians who were like, okay, so even if I don't particularly believe all of this, this is my job and I'm going to deliver on my job, and this is the theme and these are the traditions and that's what I'm going to do. But or now it feels like it's in universities. Like universities have the stable income to be able to like, okay, now I'm in this, what do they think is worth their funding? So we do that. And I think all ways in which it's not like people are like the people whose work I love, I don't think they're being inauthentic in those spaces, but I think it's very clear that like, oh, this space is kind of holding just enough stability so that something can come, and then the next space takes over that has a little bit more of the economic stability for that to happen. But all the way through, I think and I think right now we're in a time of a lot of instability in so many ways. And so I think like the timekeepers or the musicians or the artists or the shamans or just these people are like the kind of the holders of the center almost, like, but it's almost like the alchemical center or something. So it's like all of these empires are going to rise and fall. All of these places that seem to hold a certain amount of stability are definitely going to crumble or don't have maybe the spine you thought they had when other things start to shift and crumble. So it's just such an interesting profession. And I think you're like the perfect person to be talking to about this, because you found, probably through just like so much trial, a way to kind of pull all of these roots and then start to embody all of these things that then just are like, this is the thing I'm holding, and I'm gonna, you know, walk into these spaces, and whoever is drawn to be in that space, I'm gonna hold this for you, and then I'm gonna take it. And it is like there's that kind of traveling aspect to it, of not troubadour, but whatever is the modern version of this, and something about like, yeah, holding the spiritual center, because religious or not, music is deeply spiritual. And even if people have different words for like, oh, I feel my body like vibrating in this way that feels really deeply satisfying, it's like, yeah, that counts. Yeah. That was very tangential, but I think it's very cool that you are like holding to this profession, or like kind of redefining or reshaping this profession in a cool way, and how you show up and what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. There's so much that you just shared. And maybe I'll just respond to a part of it. Which is, I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky, and I feel so like delighted that I get to live the kind of life that I get to live as an artist. I think there were times in my life where various kind of elemental bodies within myself and my quote-unquote professions and occupations, and there was some misalignment. And when there's misalignment within yourself, it generates, or it can generate, in my case, like misalignments and suffering in other parts of your life. And the more and more that you ignore the sort of fundamental misalignments within yourself, in my experience, the more and more these kind of manifestations of those fundamental misalignments start to accumulate and compound. And eventually it becomes untenable, and you have to make really, really hard decisions. And I think over the course of my life, there have been kind of large cycles that end and begin, and in those inflection points, I've had to make some really serious or just important and impactful decisions for my life. And one of the most, when I think about my life, I feel most grateful when I think about the kind of moments and the accumulating moments where I really decided to kind of devote myself to the life of an artist, whatever that means, and devote myself to the path of creative learning and creative collaboration. And that has changed everything. It's changed everything. And so that's all to say that I feel so lucky that I get to do this. And everything else that comes with living in a capitalist and racist and transphobic and sexist and patriarchal society, that's all there. You know, that doesn't just magically go away or resolve itself because, you know, some things inside of you are aligned. But for me, it's clarified kind of the values that I want to lead with in my life, and it's clarified at very important moments what the path is, kind of lights the path for me. And so I just feel like even with the challenges that come with being part of like a profession or part of like entangled and overlapping professions, while also trying to maintain a sense of dignity and self-love and a sense of integrity within the work. It's just like it's beyond my wildest dreams, the life that I get to live, you know, and the people that I get to meet and the things that I get to experience and the ways in which I get to push myself, challenge myself to grow and learn. So yeah, I think the feeling that I mostly have, even amidst all of the very, very difficult and sometimes impossible decisions that we're faced with every day, the feeling that I have overwhelmingly is just deep gratitude and also like delightful kind of shock and surprise. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Days. I was just thinking that like it sounds like well, I guess this is a question. Do you see it more as almost like the daily North Star or the general North Star that reminds the daily is devotion or more faithfulness, or maybe those are combined? And when you're talking about getting really clear on like, well, here are examples of what I don't like, and those are not going to go away, but they just get me clear on what my life is about, which is about this. Do you have like a synthesized, I was just talking to someone the other day on the phone where kind of out of nowhere I was able to to speak my own synthesis, but only because they assumed another one. You know, they were like, well, I don't want this. And I was like, well, I'm not about that. I'm about this. And then when it came out of my mouth, I was like, I am. And in this context, it was like someone was saying, it was about how to come at a relationship. And I think their assumption was like, either this like works really well or it doesn't at all, and we don't be with each other or be around each other. You know, it was this kind of black and white style. And I was like, I see that. That's not what my life is about. I said, my life is about holding space for people's duality and grow, and for myself and for other people, growing more and more space for you're this and you're this and you're everything in between. And how do I hold more space for that? And I was like, I'll do that whether you're here or not, whether anyone else is around me or not. Like, that's my life's mission. And I was like, I've never said that before.
That's beautiful.
That was so cool. But it was only because someone like assumed something that all of a sudden something in me was like, oh no. But do you have a thought or a feeling around what that might be for you? Like a North Star in all of this?
Yeah, you know, real answers only is that, like, yes, of course, I have, like, an artist statement and the things that I write in, like, a professional bio and the things that I might write when, you know, working on a grant application about what my practice is and who I am as an artist. And that can all be true. And maybe the real answer is that I kind of have to find it every day. And I think being in conversation with people and being in having sort of this kind of relational clarity helps. But I do have to find it, or I get to find it and make it and engage with it every day anew. I think in the fewest words possible, I think it has to do with presence and with transformation, and has to do with kind of finding like the true thing in that moment that just makes me feel so excited and grateful to be alive. Yeah, I was at a concert recently. Speaking about devotion, I was at a concert recently by Rajna Swaminathan at the Apollo Theater. It's a beautiful concert with an amazing
I think I saw this
ensemble.
on your Instagram stories.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's beautiful. And Rajna was describing one of the pieces that they had written, and they described a lesson or inspiration, and forgive me if I'm kind of remembering this in a way that's convenient for me. But they described...
what a great statement.
A lesson that was kind of embedded within this piece, that was passed along by someone that was really important to them. And it was that devotion is the path, not mastery. And as soon as I heard that, right, all of the bells inside of me started ringing, and I was like, "Oh, that is true." Right? Like when you hear something, and like all of the spidey senses are like, "Yes, whatever that is, go closer to that." And so that's been it's been continuously ringing in my head too, because, and even when I was, I think when I'm thinking about teaching as well. I think, you know, the core of the most impactful learning experiences for myself is when I had space to find that, like, that thing, that fire, the inspiration, or the thing that would kind of drive from the inside my learning and my growth, or what, you know, educators would call like intrinsic motivation. So it's finding that core that you can connect to, that makes the pursuit so pleasurable, and it makes the journey toward like so irresistible that you just kind of can't help but keep going, because it's fun, because it's satisfying, because witnessing yourself grow and learn and get better is so exciting, and it helps build this kind of internal spiritual infrastructure and emotional infrastructure inside yourself. And so all of that kind of came together when I heard Rajna say, devotion is the path, not mastery. So that is sort of ringing, and I'm just bringing that into this conversation.
That's beautiful. Well, that's funny, because that's what I heard when you were speaking last. The word that kept coming to mind was like, that just sounds like a life devotion. That sounds like that was the key word that kept coming to my head, which is why I asked. I was curious if that, and that's your answer. So that's cool. So it's fully integrated, at least on some level. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for reflecting that back.
Yeah. Do you want to play another song?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Ready?
What a great transition, too. Wow. What just happened to us? Can someone explain what just occurred?
I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure it out. This is a piece called "The Sweetness of Candy" by Eyvind Kang, and the violinist that we were listening to is the great Indian classical violinist Kala Ramnath.
Mm.
And this piece comes, is kind of the centerpiece within a larger work called The Story of Iceland that Eyvind wrote and released in the year 2000. This is a piece that I heard for the first time when I was like 19. A friend showed it to me. And then it quickly became like the only thing that I listened to for like probably a year.
The album or the song?
The album,
yeah.
And especially this song.
Yeah.
The whole album is kind of, put it very, very crudely, as like variations on a harmonic progression. And it's a same or similar progression to the one that we just heard. But everything is just so distilled and so perfect. And the reason I chose this and the first song and why I chose the third song coming up is that I think they're all examples of songs in which there's nothing extraneous. There's nothing that is unnecessary to be said, and everything that is said is absolutely necessary. And that kind of like poetic distillation and that kind of potency and concentration of like spirit and poetry and kind of density of meaning and purpose is something that just, even when I was a kid listening to this, it just felt so right to me, and it felt so important to like try to tap into that or tune into that or figure out how to do that. And this is a piece that like what Kala Ramnath does with the violin melody, this improvisational melody that just kind of flows effortlessly and perfectly, like kind of like a bird on the currents of the wind.
Totally.
And just like kind of, relaxing when they need to and just gliding, and then other times like churning. And it's this perfect story. And each time I listen to it, like without fail, I feel like the kind of levels of elevation that Kala Ramnath takes us through. And it's just so, it's perfect. I've been just such a kind of like a devotee of Eyvind Kang's music and work. And he himself is like one, I think, a very beautiful example of somebody who is so utterly and egolessly and fully devoted to music. And yeah, I just, this has been a piece of music that both the composition as a whole and the violin playing and the kind of spiritual essence of the music that has just stayed imprinted on my soul for as long as I can remember.
You know what's so cool about what you're saying is, speaking of holding space for duality, this idea of like distillation and like nothing more is said than what needs to be said. And I see that being so true in your work, but also you're so playful and you're so just like the whirly tubes in the piece that we did. Like, what if there were whirly tubes? And it's like this like beautiful kind of like, show me your junk drawer. I want to use all the junk in it and we'll make them all into instruments, So it's like, that's true. And I see the distillation part being true too. And it's really cool to see both in flow, because I think that there's maybe a misconception and like kind of the resulted beautiful distilled moment that the final form of what you see of an artwork or something, that it's like, oh, potentially the whole time the artist was like, oh no, only this piece or something. But it's like, sometimes it's like everything, and then, oh, just kidding, oh, all that, okay, and just that. And then that's what people see.
Yeah.
But it's cool to think that like having an aesthetic that is a very distilled, very specific, very intentional doesn't mean no playfulness or no junk drawer or no whirly tubes. Like,
wow.
yeah. So I think that's cool.
I'm so glad that you said that.
Yeah.
when you say that, the first person that comes to mind is Senga Ninguri, and she is a like dear mentor and grandmother and friend and collaborator. She's a sculptor, performance artist, poet, comedian, just incredible soul. And through getting to know her and her work and her practice and process, she is just overflowing with play and playfulness.
Cool.
And the way that she listens to materials is so intuitive and playful and open and unpretentious, and she listens just so hard to hear like what these materials want to do and how they want to be played with, and what's kind of like how much like delight and curiosity we can like let emerge through the engagement with the materials. But then exactly like you're saying, kind of the result, I just saw her exhibition up at Dia Beacon, and it's like multi-wings of a gallery and massive, and all of these masterpieces everywhere that are so distilled, and it's like two sentences placed like perfectly next to each other, but then within each sentence there's so much life and playfulness, and there's humor, and there's spirituality and blood, and I think, you know, when I imagine somebody who really contains and embodies and is able to like have come forth from her that duality, I think of Senga. So it's a real honor to have that reflected back, because that's something that I've learned so much from her.
Yeah, this is cool. I wonder if there's going to be a new term for this kind of aesthetic, which is like play and almost like maximalism right before it all gets taken away, for like a very right before minimalism, just like everything all at once. Oh, but just this. Okay, that's nice. But like in a very playful, like, yeah, how fun. Do you want to play us one more song?
Yeah, sure, one more song.
William was said to be a bad boy. Met him behind the leaf of a door. William was the saddest boy I ever saw. Talk to me with his invisible tears. William is driving a dark blue car at the moment, but I'm sure it will change in a white one soon. Talk to me, let us have a green one. Too promptly I took a fancy for spending the rest of my days and nights with that boy. Talk to me, let us have a brandy or two. Old as the hills are those who believe in those of pure heart and head. Well, I must have a chorus in his heart and lilacs in his shoes. William is the sweetest boy I ever saw. Talk to me, let us have a baby or two. Now that bad boy's away from me, but I don't mind it very much, 'cause when he back again, talk to me, let us have another day or three.
DJ any of my parties anytime. Yeah. You're now being hired as DJ. Oh my gosh.
So
in everything you've
beautiful.
chosen, it's like instant world, you know?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I feel like I was just holding hands with her, like walking through.
I know, right? It is kind of like walking on like a small dirt path
Totally. That's
next to a meadow.
Yeah.
It's like beautiful out, and you're just kind of like once in a while twirling, and then sometimes just.
Did you have on a
skipping
flower dress
or-
too?
Yeah, similar. There were definitely flowers.
Amazing.
This is Sybille Baier. She was a German singer and actress, and she recorded these songs in the early 70s, between 1970 and 73, when she was in her 20s. And she just recorded them at home on like reel-to-reel tape. Never released them, never pursued a career as, stopped pursuing a career as an actress and as a singer, moved to the States and raised a family. And then 30 years later, her son found these tapes, decided to just make like CDs for presents, like gifts for family. And then somehow it got to like a producer and a record label, and they released it in 2006.
Wow.
And that's how I learned about this music. A friend shared it with me. And apart from like the composition of the songs, like the whole
Very
record,
good. Yeah.
a whole record, these mini masterpieces,
Mhm.
2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, 1 minute long. You know, the compositions, they just kind of like unfurl in these ways that are kind of just unpredictable and playful and a little bit like mischievous. And then the poetry is also, it kind of unfolds and tumbles in this unexpected way. And the imagery that she uses and the storytelling is like there and not there. And it just blew my mind the first time I heard this kind of songwriting. And then the way that it's recorded and the intention behind them is so personal and intimate and very pure. It just feels so close to the heart. And again, an example of like a song where there's just nothing extra. Like everything happens in the way that it needs to until it's done, and it's done. So yeah, this whole record, each song, I feel like I have a long relationship with.
I can't wait to listen to that full record.
It's hard to just pick one.
It's interesting too, because from what I could gather of the story, what you just said about what she ended up doing is kind of what the song foretold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So it's also what like a perfect career.
totally.
I just made these masterpieces, and then I went and had a family, and then my son was like, oh, look, my mom made masterpieces, and then everyone gets to hear it. And then you got to have the best of both worlds. Calling it in.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
awesome. How do you, this is just like a woman question, but it's like, how do you have it all? How do you have it all?
It's a very good question. And I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does anyone know?
I don't know. You know, I'm trying to figure it out, and yeah, questions around family and motherhood, and for me, it's like, in some ways, the question of motherhood and of family making feels so clear to me. And it's just like a reverberant yes, like, let's try. And I think where the questions come in is maybe around time, you know, to bring it back to it.
Yeah.
Back to our conversation of time. And maybe I'm just piecing this together, like maybe that's another kind of core motivation as to why I feel so devoted to this practice of time caretaking. Maybe it's selfishly I'm wanting to find ways to stretch it and to make it more capacious.
What does that word mean?
Like more capacity. larger, can hold more, can contain more. Because I know that the deep, profound, impossible responsibility of like bringing life into this world, especially at a time like this. And I know the amount of devotion that I will want to bring to such a partnership as like this child and children is infinite. And there's no comparison, and I'm about to make this comparison. Oof.
We're here for it all.
Warning.
We are capacious.
One of the things that is so irresistible about music is that it is also an infinite container. And it will receive and it will hold as much as you want to give it. Forever. It will never be full. Like you could just live your whole life with one instrument or your voice, and you would never kind of get to the end. And that's, I think, what makes music, I think, such a perfect container, particularly those with like maybe extreme or obsessive or addictive personalities, because it's a safe container, and it's a space in which you can learn to develop kind of healthy relationships to these qualities that one might have of obsessiveness or kind of devotion to work and detail. And I think when my life has been misaligned and when the container has been not right, those qualities start to become demons. And that's another reason, or maybe the core reason, why I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to kind of say yes to creating this container of art, because it gives me the opportunity to cultivate and develop these qualities within myself, within this like playground that is infinitely challenging, in which I'll never get bored, and where these qualities can evolve rather than decay. And when I think of like being a mother, I feel a similar thing, where it's like there's this infinite container and this infinite love that I feel, and this infinite container, not that a child is a container, but really kind of the relationship and the space and the life around it. And that is something that I know that I have this sort of infinite love and devotion for, and I know will similarly receive that love infinitely. And so I think the question is around time is like, how do we take care of ourselves enough so that we can cultivate a presence, so that time can be large enough, capacious enough to hold like all of the infinities that we want to participate in our lives. And I don't know.
Yeah, I was just like, man, I gotta like relax and meditate just like all the time. That's the only thing I notice that holds that, or that starts to bend timelines a little bit.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, any place that there's like some resistance or something. I'm like, ooh, that's actually, I'm making more limits. How do I make more space? Make more space. Make more space. Yeah.
Yeah, and what comes to mind is like just, and I think different practitioners of meditation and Buddhists use this language a lot of like of having a home to land, you know, and that's what that makes me think of. It's like amidst all of this that we're engaging with and striving for or inviting, like cultivating this consistent, safe place of home is so important. And also something that like you or one has to decide to do every day and each moment.
Intentional practice.
Totally.
Yeah. And maybe also infinite.
And
maybe home is also infinite playground.
Home is also
just
an
like
infinite
music.
playground. Yeah.
That's the record. Home is infinite playground.
I
Thank
love
you
it.
so much, Eddie.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. My brain is, I wish I could stay here much longer, but my brain is going to be like soaking up these beautiful.
Yeah, I feel a little tingly in the head too.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Songs. If you enjoyed this conversation, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel, and remember to turn the notification bell on so that you can be updated when new episodes are published. This is an interactive project aimed at building a meaningful musical community online, so I would love to hear your thoughts and musings, or even a song recommendation in the comments below. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on all platforms at Hope Littwin or at hopelittwin.com. And my music is available on Spotify, iTunes, and Bandcamp under my name, Hope Littwin. Peace out.